for the stationary blade from being the movable blade. They want to keep the stationary blade and they want to make this blade here. Oh, sorry. Oh,
Oh no.
it's called 40. Oh, you didn't hear? He said if you come after 12, movable blade here. All right, and how to keep here. So if you're going to do it, you can take here and you can practice just this, but you gotta get to a place where you can just keep your movable blade only moving. Why is that important? Because when you aren't keeping it still, I can always make copies of more people wanting to practice this, or I can for strips if anybody else wants to get in on this. But what happens if you're not keeping it still? I'm gonna show you what happens. You do like that. Can you see how I change the angle of my cut? Yes. And if I'm gonna cut straight horizontal, if I'm cutting here and the hair is like this and I'm doing like this, I wanna just move this without this, okay? But when I don't, what happens is I change the angle of my cut. When I come out of the angle of my cut, oh, Mike Reason. Is Mike Reason with somebody? If I come out of the angle of my cut, then it shifts the haircut and then now it's not even. That's how people get divots around the hair. That's how you cut too much off. Even if you're cutting, let's say you're doing a 90 degree and you're cutting here, right? Like around the head. I'll use this one. If you're doing a 90 degree here and you're cutting right there at the angle and you come here and once you do this here, you didn't cut as much off here, but you could have right here where this is supposed to go in, you could have shifted my finger. Does that make sense? And cut too much off in there. Now you don't understand how come this cut is here. So we're talking about foundational cuts. You don't understand how come this cut is supposed to look like this, but instead of it looking like that, it's like, it goes like that. Does that make sense? They're called divots. And you see that a lot of times in haircuts when we are cutting too much off. Around the ear, it happens as well, especially if you understand how this angle is. If I'm supposed to be cutting a 0 degree angle and everything, the bob that you showed me, the one that you did yesterday, if you're doing that cut here, I think it was more like a shag, but basically all of it coming down to a 0 degree, right? When it's supposed to be 0 degree, and if you start following the angle, then you're like, oh shoot, you're following, what's happening is you're following with the rise of where that ear is at. Because of that ear, or you're tugging too much and you're holding all of this down right here around the ear, and especially if that ear is protruding, you're holding it all down, so you're kind of cutting like this, but then when it's done and you release the tension, it rises up, and that can be a problem with your haircut. So what this is for you to take some scissors, cut one strip straight across, take your shears, and we're gonna go and we're gonna practice cutting. And so a lot of this can be point cutting because I like texture when I'm cutting. So when my clients come in and if they're getting a certain amount off, doesn't mean that you have to cut like all the way up here. But I do want you guys to practice by holding this and just go in.
Point cut?
Yeah, by point cutting it. Now, the goal is, this is hard to not do with. The faster you do it, the goal is, once you see that here, fitting the strips, I'm gonna order it so it probably looks a little bit more professional, but I wanted to get my point across today. But the goal is to go in and follow the same guideline of doing that cut. I didn't make my lines closer. Some of them, the very bottom one, my lines are a lot closer. On some of these, my lines are a lot open more. But I'm just trying to get the point so you can take it and you can go in. If you hold it here, if I'm underneath the occipital bone, if I'm cutting down here, and if I'm underneath the parietal ridge, which is right in here, I want to cut at a palm to palm. This is how I'm cutting. So my palm is always facing the other palm, cutting underneath palm to palm, okay? If I decide to cut above my parietal ridge and my occipital bone, now I'm cutting over the fingers. That's when it's so safe while I'm cutting here. That's when it's safe to take it here and cut here. if you have it up, and let's say you're just taking the hair, make this a half just to show you what I'm talking about. This is your hair, and you combed all of the hair up, and you're bringing this down, and you want to go in like this at a diagonal line. Why diagonal? Because diagonal line helps to blend, right? Where horizontal, it's really hard to just get that hair to look or to cut anything if you're just cutting the hair. I say horizontal, sorry, vertical. When you're cutting vertical, you're not really cutting hair. It's paper, yeah, but when cutting hair and the hair is pulling straight up, you're just kind of doing the hair like this, but it's not really showing texture. But you get more texture if you go in and you go at a diagonal line. Can y'all see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
You see the difference? Right? I cut past the second knuckle. Move, or don't cut past second knuckle. When you get to that next part, you move it over. When you get to the next part, you move it over. Okay? So I just wanted y'all to have something to practice it on. Yes, on your papers, you can just keep cutting your strips out, keep using your papers. I have this own little ratchet template until our order comes in. But I'm gonna start using this a lot more with our students because they are not understanding how to hold shears, how to point cut. All right. All right. So my lines, for instance, are here. If you want to go in and you want to cut your line, but you want to see the lines here, I'm gonna give you another half. Boom, 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 boom. I also, especially when the shears are starting to get really bad, I go in and I teach people how to go in, close coming out. Mm-hmm. You run less risk at cutting yourself. Go in, close coming out. So it's like circular motions.
Cut myself yesterday.
Did you? So it's the same concept. If you ever see me and I'm combing the hair up, hair is pulled up, and then when I do this, I'm gonna have to, there we go. If I do this here and I'm cutting to the second knuckle, and what you'll see me doing is going in and I close coming out, close coming out, close coming out, close coming out. I don't ever go in and stab myself. See that? And a lot of people do that, and it's easier to cut. I have a forever mark right here that is like calloused finger skin tissue, but you can barely see it. But when I do like this, can y'all see that small little triangle right there? If I draw it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I've cut myself so many times right here. Yeah, just because when I'm cutting, I keep going like that. Why? Could you do it too, or are you laughing at me?
No, I'm laughing because Eric Cutters cut himself yesterday, and I had to bandage him up.
Yeah, no, it's
he
like
was
bad.
like bleeding.
The other side, which is why I was asking if anybody's left-handed, because the point is to be able to show you guys here, and then if you're left-handed, I would have to show left-handed person the other side. Obviously, they could take it and probably just see the lines through the paper or whatever. But you can flip it over and do the same thing. But going in, the whole point is just so you guys can start practicing and seeing how deep you're cutting. We teach, I think a few weeks back, I came and Coach was showing you guys on a Saturday, showing you point cuts, and he was showing y'all thinning shears. Am I right? And he was saying that thinning shears has its purpose. It's not for everybody. All right? That's the big issue. Like a lot of people feel like, oh, I use thinning shears on everybody. I overheard a student at my first school that really taught that, and she was like, yeah, and I always pull the thinning shears on everybody. It always just looks so good. And I was just like,
Not everybody.
I was so mad.
What if they have thin hair?
I was just mad that she was telling, like, why would you tell your client that? You don't use thinning shears on everybody. Not if, it could be thin hair. You could have coarse hair and like thin. Does that make sense? It could be coarse and wiry without it being thick. That's possible, right? And to take some of the weight out, I wouldn't really want to use it. I'd probably use it just on the ends, but not on the scalp. It's a big difference. You know what I mean? You can take too much hair out of that. My client yesterday, do you remember Dawson's Creek? Anybody remember Dawson's Creek?
I never watched it.
You never watched it?
No.
Do you know who Joshua Jackson is? Pacey? Yeah, Pacey? Okay. Oh my God. This guy was so handsome, but he looked so much like, it wasn't even that he was handsome, he just looked like Pacey, Joshua Jackson. Anyway, his hair is thick. Like I can look at the TV show and tell Joshua Jackson's hair is just thick and coarse, and he didn't want anything touched from it. But he wanted the texture, and I didn't use thinning shears on him. I just went in and I point cut it. This is another thing that we show you, and a lot of this is advanced, but I'm showing you guys because it's still foundational. When you come here and you chop through here, can everybody see what I just did? Right. See if they just pull it out. There you go. Just from these tiny pieces, this is how close the pieces of lines that you see from the hair. That's the hair that remains. Okay. Everything else, it comes out. Okay. Now, it depends on how you want to do that. If this is the scalp and you decide, hey, I want to stay away from the scalp, come up about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, because you still want that scalp. I'll do it on the side. This is a full inch, about 1 inch. You want to still have some thickness towards the scalp. Okay, so you want to start mid strands first cut. Then my second strand is going to be about another 1/2 inch to 1 inch up here, and then my last one is going to be on the ends. So I'm always doing like 1, 2, 3, right? 1, followed up 2, followed up 3. That's the way you will see me always cut if I'm using thinning shears. Not everybody has the same concept. Some people like to use thinning shears even when they are still point cutting. And you could possibly do that too. So I'm giving texture, right? We use these for different things. We're using these for thinning, we're using it for texture, and we're also using it if you just want some more extra jagged. But do I pull it out on everything? No. I like to pull out my guarded razor. Have y'all seen one of those? Like it's a razor and it's got like a little pivot on it.
Yeah.
Most cosmos use that all the time. But for barbers, if I was doing your hair, I would do a guarded razor, like right, and keep all your texture. Give extra texture, but keep all your thickness, because you can still do that. It's like wispy without losing the thickness of the hair. I want to keep the quality of the hair. I don't want to make it bad. If you do too much of it, then it starts to look really bad, and when it starts to grow out, you can tell something's wrong. And then the end starts to just kind of, they don't style the way you want. They kind of look like it's all over the place. You gotta be careful with that. All right. So I just want you guys to try A-line and just see how you feel with A-line of shears. Am I running out of time? I was 12 o'clock. I don't know why it feels like an extra hour to me today. All right, if y'all want to cut one strip off, y'all can. I got extra scissors.